Okay, so thank you for joining me today, you guys. So we were requested to record an updated version of this, and I went back and I looked. And by the way, I'm Eric Lee. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. If anybody's first time joining me, principal broker for the state of Utah and developer of this program. And I'm glad to be able to join you guys each week for an hour and share a little bit, just so that you know. If you have questions, comments, feedback, other things you'd like to see training on, you can always email me directly at brokerericlee@gmail.com. And I do know that 1 hour a week is not sufficient training for real estate agents. It is a good place to sharpen the saw. It's a great starting place if budget's tight or you're just trying to stay plugged in a little bit. I do have a full version of the training program available at eliteagenttraining.com. And then I've got my YouTube channel. So I went to my YouTube channel because one person requested just earlier than this and said, hey, do you record all of these? And I said, no, I don't record everyone, but I've got a sample. I went back, and the last time I recorded this training was 9 years ago. So we're going to update that. Excuse me. We're going to update that in our YouTube channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, do so. It's just Elite Agent Training in YouTube, and then you'll get a notice when we add new videos to that. So with that said, let's go ahead and start today. I want to share my screen as we get going, and I'm going to share a couple of different things with you. So there's my little introductory screen, what I was talking to you about, the full version of the training program and our YouTube channel. And every week we're trying to take a bite out of the elephant, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's a big task. And real estate, taking this on as a career is a big, big job. So last week we talked about understanding your forms. They're one of the best tools that you're using, and it comes down to a daily habit. For a brand new agent, I would say 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour a day of studying your forms. If you're an experienced agent, you can do 30 minutes to an hour a week, but this should be a regular part of your time. And time is what we're talking about today. So I found this chart a few years ago. It's based on, I think, a 52-week year, and no holiday time mixed in with this. It's just straight working all the time. And the reason why I share this is I gain a couple of appreciations from seeing this chart. One of the first things that I appreciate is where I started. I do remember my first job, and it was right around this amount for the dollars per hour. And I was pretty happy for that job. And another thing that I learned from this is if I'm shooting for a higher target, like for the first time I made 6 digits in a year, then I started to treat my time differently. For example, I was a not new agent. It was probably my second or third year when I hit that target. And I was doing enough business that I was highly sought after for appointments by title companies, lenders, we'll take you to lunch, that type of thing, right? And so I'm going to lunch with them and I'm thinking, hey, free lunch. And this is awesome. But our lunches were always an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours long. And so I did this training and I realized this free lunch is costing me, if it's a 2 hour lunch, it's costing me $100. And so I actually stopped going to lunches as much. I became very intentional about where I put my time. And instead of going to lunch, 2 or 3 times a week with somebody that was paying for my lunch, I would instead say, okay, this is going to be a part of my business. And I go to my power team training, and that has me going to lunch with another business leader once a week. And the rest of the time, I could be done with lunch and back at work within 30 minutes, which effectively saved me $150 a day as far as managing my time went. The other thing that this teaches me is that if I can identify 1 hour a day where I'm wasting time, where I'm not being as effective as I could be, because there are so many different demands on our time that it becomes almost crushing some days. But if I could identify, if I could streamline my efforts, if I could not waste time, then it would be effectively giving me a substantial raise. I'm not working any more hours. I'm just identifying the wasted time within the gaps throughout my day. And that's effectively a substantial raise. And again, I do remember my first job. I do remember my first raise, 25 cents an hour. How excited that made me, how much more affordability I had in life for a 25-cent hour uh, raise. I remember my father, who was a school teacher, in order to get a $5,000 a year raise, he needed to get his master's degree. So he moved to the family from one home to another, uh, incurred more debt, went to school for 2 years while he's working a job full time, managing a family of five, eventually six kids, and taking school at night to get a $5,000 a year raise. And for me in this business, I could more than double that by simply identifying some time where I wasn't being as efficient or effective as I could be. So, if we gain some appreciation for our time, if we gain respect for our time, then it changes our outlook on life. All right. So, here's a thought. Real estate agents, there's a trainer that was going around, and I can't remember who he was, but I'd have agents go to his classes. I went to him once as well, so I remember very well. He's comparing real estate agents to attorneys and doctors, and how ludicrous it would be, this thought of going into your doctor's office and they say, okay, you need a surgery, and they tell you the price of the surgery will be, $10,000, and you say, okay, I'll take the surgery if you'll do it for $5,000, cut your rates. They're like, that's ridiculous. You would never do that to your doctor. And yet people do that to you in the real estate business all the time. You're always cutting your rates. And so, anyways, the people come out of that thinking, yeah, we can make as much as doctors and lawyers, which is 100% true. We absolutely can. But people don't naturally just treat you like a professional. We treat some of these professions with more respect because we know what they went through to achieve their status, basically, that MD behind their name. We know that that was not easy. Now, for real estate agents, a lot of people don't know, but 120 hours, that's about a tenth of the time it takes to get your license to cut hair. And there's a lot of professionals out there that think that's way too little time. We need to change the laws. We need to increase the difficulty, increase the barriers to entry for this career because it is a great career and it does provide exceptional value. And too many people disrespect it, which is all true. But barriers to entry is not something that the governor wants to espouse. He wants people to have jobs, make it easy for them to enter into the work field. So, with 120 hours of education, none of which actually teaches you how to take good care of your clients, how do we then become professional? And how do we get other people to treat us professionally? Is it simply by making enough money that we think of ourselves more highly? Is it just our mindset? You guys have all heard the phrase, whoe'er thou art, act well thy part. How we become professional and get other people to treat us that way is we start acting like a professional. One of the first quotes that I learned, I was a struggling real estate agent about 8 months into my career. I had closed 3 or 4 transactions by that time, which my broker thought was fantastic for a new agent. Looking back, it probably was. It didn't pay my bills, though. And so I was still struggling. And so I put on a credit card, a seminar that I went to, a 2 or 3 day seminar, put it on a credit card. And this is one of 2 quotes that I came away from that changed my life. One was work when you're working and play when you're playing. And that taught me about having professional boundaries. And so I want to talk about this because professional boundaries is how you manage your time. Now, we're not managing time. Everybody has the same amount of time. It doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or the guy sleeping under a cardboard box under the overpass. Everybody's got the same 24 hours. So really, it's not about managing time. It's about how you manage yourself. There's lots of things that cause disruptions to how we manage ourselves. Time-consuming activities and clients. There are some clients that we don't put boundaries on very well, and they will just eat your life up, right? There's some activities that consume a lot of time often because they're things that we dislike. Sometimes it's family and friends adjusting to this idea of we're self-employed. So we do have a job. It's just we have to enforce it ourselves. And since most of us work from home, a lot of times they see us as we're available all the time to help them out, right? So can you run this errand for me? Can you do this for me? And we have to, again, learn to set boundaries. This is what I mentioned earlier about distasteful activities being put off for so long that problems arise. There is a challenge associated with being self-employed. It means we have to be very good at accounting. A lot of us don't like accounting. I hate accounting, right? But we have to learn to do well with it. Some of us hate the videos, the technology, the social media stuff, us older folks, right? Some of the younger folks hate the personal contact, the need to actually get on the phone and talk to people. They're very comfortable texting. Distasteful activities get put off until serious problems arise. Because being self employed, you have to learn to wear lots of different hats. So, other things that cause problems with us managing ourselves. We get overwhelmed with paperwork. This can be a very overwhelming career. There's just so much that we need to learn as we're going through it. The paperwork, as we talked about last week, our challenge with that is there's literally probably over 100 different forms, legal forms, that we need to be good at filling out. That can cause some people to shut down. A massive learning curve. Again, if you don't have good boundaries, you get phone calls at all hours of the day and night. I had one broker once brag to me that they had taken calls at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning. I'm like, that's not something that I look at with respect. I more feel compassion or pity towards somebody that has built their business. And these guys were in their 80s. It was a husband and wife team in their 80s. And I felt more compassion and pity towards them than respect and admiration. So there's a couple things that we can do to combat this, right? All of these things that derail us. And we've talked about this somewhat over the past few weeks. You have to have this vision, which I call a blueprint, your affirmations, whatever it is you call it. You have this vision of your life that every day you wake up and you look at your blueprint and say, okay, this is what we're building today, right? And so once you've got that blueprint, then you pass the hat to the manager within yourself that says, okay, let's build a plan around this. And we talked about that. We talked about doing the SMART goals. And so hopefully we've got those SMART goals broken down for us. And now what we want to do is take the next step. And I'll share with you some tools that make this easy. But in the next step, we need to take those SMART goals and we need to time block. And this helps us again set these healthy boundaries that will help us succeed. And so for your ideal week, the first step that you need to do is you just get a blank 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and you write down all of the important things that you do during the week. Okay, so prospecting should be at the top of everybody's list. You should have time for prospecting on. Following up on listings, files that are under contract, making sure that you're on top of all the details there. If you've got assistants or staff, time to meet with them. Sales meetings, like staying plugged into trainings, I think is very important. I notice really serious problems coming up with agents that are very experienced because they start to think, I'm not getting value out of the sales meetings. So they fail to sharpen their saws, their knowledge falls behind, and they can get in trouble, right? Time to meet with clients, scheduling showings, responding to phone calls. No, I don't answer my phone 24/7, which means I have to schedule time to respond to phone calls. One of my favorite agents that joined with me, he's now a broker, Steve Stringham. He started out brand new with me. And since then, he's taking this concept. And I haven't called him recently in the morning, but it used to be that he'd blocked out his morning time for his important phone calls, which means he didn't take phone calls. And his voicemail said so. If you've called me between this time and this time, I'll return calls by then, so that he could focus on his productive work, not just putting out fires all day long, right? And then, of course, as we mentioned, paperwork and study, those were things that we said last week were very important, should be a very important part of every real estate agent's week. So once you get a list down on your 8.5 by 11 blank sheet of paper, our next step that we want to do is we want to plug that in to our plan, and we want to build this plan out. And I want to share with you guys a story of how this played out with me. Um, so I was at a point in my life where I was earning a six-digit income, and I thought things were really good. I had been raised in a very modest household. Dad was a school teacher. We all know how much they make. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so we didn't have a lot. We didn't have any excess. I think my dad capped out around 60,000 for most of my life. I think 40,000. But he worked hard, and I have some great respect for him. But I wasn't used to a lot of money. And so when I'm making $100,000 a year, that's more than anybody in my family has ever made. But I didn't have any of these healthy boundaries in place. And so what I found was that I'm going to work and I'm putting in 80 hours a week, sometimes 80 plus. And yes, I'm having some great success. But one time my wife came to me and said, "This isn't what we signed up for. You're gone all the time. Even when you're here, you're not present." And that's more of a problem today than it was back then, right? Because now we have our smartphones. So we're all sitting in a room together on our smartphones. So a lot of people are there, they're just not present for each other, right? That was her complaint to me. You're here, but you're not present. Even when you are here, you're not present, right? Um, and I took a step back and I said, you know what? She's right. I am not managing this in a healthy way. I didn't have anybody training me. All the things that I train you guys on are things that I learned in my own journey of success. It's through the school of hard knocks. Yes, I've been through lots of trainers, read lots of books, but I've put those things into effect and seen which things worked and which things didn't. And then I get to pass them along to you. Well, nobody had taught me about this concept that I'm sharing with you right now. And that was this idea that I needed to set boundaries. And if I set boundaries, that it might help my business. I really didn't think it would. I fully expected to go from $100,000 a year down to about $60,000 a year. Again, I feel like my family's on the line. So I decide I'm going to take the plunge and I need to build a plan. And so for the very first time, I built a plan. So this is 3 years into my career. I started in 2003. So this is when it was printed. This you can ignore. I just went back in time in my calendar to find a blank uh, calendar where I could time slot stuff, right? But this is the actual day I made my very first time blocking calendar. And I don't even remember all the things that were on here. This is what fit me. This was my ideal week. So for the very first time in my life, I set boundaries and I started telling people I don't work every day, all day, right? I work 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that meant that I was free in the evenings where I could be present with my family. Work when you're working, play when you're playing. I didn't have any playtime in there with my family. But I knew that for showings, most of those would happen in the evening. So I reserved Tuesdays, Thursdays, and possibly Saturdays. I didn't schedule it out on Saturdays, but if I needed to, I'd work Saturdays and then I would take Sundays off. And so now I know that I'm doing this. I need to communicate these boundaries to people. And so I started communicating in my listing presentations and buyer presentations. I was also at this point a managing broker, a relatively new one, but I was also communicating this to my agents for the first time ever, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. And I'm willing to do, I do showings Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And I expected to lose a lot of business, especially with buyers, because they were the needy ones. So when I met with buyers and I went through my buyer presentation, I first approached it with a little bit of trepidation. Showings Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Does that work for you? And it surprised me that over and over and over, the buyers would say, I don't think we can go out 3 times a week. That seems like an awful lot for us. We've got a lot of stuff going on, but for sure, once or twice a week. I'm like, okay, that's not the response I expected to get. I expected to get a lot of pushback. I wasn't just working with one buyer at a time, but rather than them being resistant to this, they embraced it. And when I told them, Mondays is like time for family and Fridays is a date night. They're like, oh, yeah, that's great. That makes perfect sense. Most people have heard concepts like this. They've read concepts like this in books of putting your family first, putting your relationships first. That was great. But I noticed when I didn't communicate this, that their date night on Friday night was going out and showing homes or seeing homes with their real estate agent. And they saw nothing wrong with that because that was fun for them. That was their date night. They were putting their relationship first and didn't think twice until I mentioned it. And once I mentioned it, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so I didn't get any pushback. And I was shocked by that. I thought I was going to lose so much business. But I told them, if you call me after these hours, then just leave me a message or shoot me a text or something. And I will check those first thing in the morning and return those calls. So that's what 9 to 9:30 was. It was checking my missed messages and emails. And then for the next hour, I would return those and live up to my commitment that I would reply to them as soon as possible in the morning. I honestly don't remember what 10:30 to 11 was. I had an hour of prospecting every day. I thought that an hour and a half lunch sounded about right to me. And by the way, this ideal week lasted me for exactly 1 week, and then it had to be updated. At the time, I was doing trainings every day and I was studying every day because, again, I was not only a relatively new agent, only 3 years in the business, but I was a new broker as well. And I felt like I had a lot I needed to learn. Client follow-up and appointments. So I've done all my prospecting calls here, and then I follow up with my clients in the evening, setting appointments with them. And then I was overwhelmed with paperwork at the time. So my desk was cluttered, did not feel organized. It was very stressful to me. And so I had paperwork. So I built my ideal week and I took it to my spouse and I said, this is my new plan. How do you feel about this? And she said, if you can do it, that looks great. Right. And it's very important in a career like this to have the support of your loved ones, both kids and significant others, right? It's important to have their support because without that support, then, for example, in Buffini's training course, I'm a certified Buffini mentor as well. And his training course, I don't know if he still does it, they used to send out like a little door hanger or something that you could hang on your door saying, do not interrupt. Like, this is my special time for making calls and stuff. So if you don't have the support of your friends and family and you're trying to make these calls and they're disrespecting that time, it becomes very difficult to have your power hour or whatever you call it, where you're making these contacts with people because you're getting and dealing with constant interruptions. And so I wanted to get my spouse's sign off. And she said, if you can do this, I think that looks great. Let's put it into practice. Let's see how it works, right? So I started to do this. Now, remember, prior to this, I'm working 80 hours a week. Now I'm backing it down to between 40 and 50 hours a week. And I'm fully expecting to go from $100,000 a year back to, which is 2 transactions a month. If you did 2 transactions a month today, you'd be making about 300,000 a year, right? But I'm expecting to go back to $60,000 a year in income, and I'm willing to take that hit for the sake of my family. And I did this for a year. And what I was shocked to learn was that I became so, and by the way, it was like working out for the first time. It was not easy to implement this kind of discipline where I stuck with it every day, laser focused. But I found that in 45 hours, I actually did more than I had before in 80. I went from 24 transactions a year to 35 transactions the very next year. 50% increase in business, 50% reduction in time spent on that business. And I was shocked to learn that. And that's why it's a part of my training today, because nobody ever taught this concept to me. The importance of staying focused, the importance of respecting your time. So for those of you that are part-time, for those of you that, as Sarah shared with us earlier, didn't want to make this all-encompassing career, right? Still want to make family a priority in those things. It's very important to identify the hours that you're going to be true to your business and the hours that you're going to be true to your family, and also time that you're going to be true to yourself, right? So my first week And what happened? Let me tell you the result of my first week, because I told you already this calendar lasted me for exactly 1 week. The first thing that I learned was that, again, shockingly, people had no problem with me only doing showings Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So that was welcomed in a way I hadn't anticipated. Um, the next thing I learned was I needed 30 minutes for lunch, not an hour and a half. And so that cleared up an hour a day every single day for me. I also learned once I was doing my studying for an hour a day, I didn't need that much study time. I was getting very much on top of all of my forms. And so eventually I cut that back to a half hour. Now it's down to about 30 minutes a week or an hour a week where I'm diving into the law or studying forms or something in more detail. My paperwork also, like within a couple days of an hour dedicated to paperwork, my desk was spotless. I was super organized. I had everything in a place. And I found that I could maintain that with maybe 15 minutes at the end of each day. So after 1 week of doing this, I've identified 1 hour here, about a half hour here, and 45 minutes here. So over 2 hours of time that I freed up to where I could reinvest in my business in the most effective ways, which was contacting people, right? So having learned this, now I want to stop sharing this. I want to share a different screen now, a way that you guys can do this, because this builds on some of the stuff that we've done. And I've told you already that your ideal week grows and evolves with you. So I want to share with you what mine looks like today. That week lasted me for 1 week. My next one that I made probably lasted me for 2 or 3 months. After that, you kind of get into a rhythm and they'll last you for longer. As part of the full version of my training program, and these are some of the classes that we've gone through over the last few weeks with you guys, but I want to show you how I personally implement this. So there's my personal blueprint. Now, this is again part of the training program, the full version that you guys, this is like a sample of this 1 week for a 12-week course. I've got over 75 videos in the full version. This is one of the tools that I provide there. So first of all, it's building your blueprint. This is this vision that Sarah said she had taken the time to do to vision her ideal life. A lot of you were silent with this, meaning you hadn't taken the time to do this yet. This is your CEO hat. This is whether or not you stay in business, is this type of thing right here. And so give an example how to do it, and then I've got the different ones. So for me, career and financial, my first goal was 100 or more agents. I remember that very clearly. It's now over 500, and I had some financial goals in there as well. Much like Sarah, I wanted to be somebody that knew where my children knew that I was devoted to them. So this became very important to me. It was a part of my guiding philosophy in my life. And it is to this day. My kids, for Halloween, for example, I drove an hour and a half to take my daughter trick-or-treating with one of her friends. I sat in my truck while she trick-or-treated, and then I drove back another hour and a half. So it was probably 5 or 6 hour event. And I would have rather spent that with her than anywhere else in the world, much more so than sitting at home giving out candy to strangers, right? But it's because this has been an important part of my ideal vision of my life for some time now. I love learning new languages. So this is something that I work on. And then I've got my health. Now, at the bottom of this, I need to come and I click on this link to go to SMART Goals, where that's my vision. That's my dream. Now it's time to start doing it. And so again, I take time to teach what the SMART acronym is. You'll notice that I've taken liberties with the A. It's not attainability, it's action. That's a deviation from the original SMART acronym. And then the things that I typed in on the previous page automatically carry over to this. And then I get very specific with how I'm going to do this. So I've got a specific goal, how I'm going to measure it, what's the time binding on it, and what is my specific action that I'm going to do each day to accomplish that. And I do that with each of these. And then we get to where it comes into play with our training today, where I go to my time blocking calendar. So then I've got my SMART goals and I can go back and forth to, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've got an action set with each of these. And I go to my calendar. I say, okay, here is how I'm actually taking this ideal vision of myself. I've applied my SMART goals to it, which get very specific and define an action step that I can do each day. And then I put that action into my calendar. And guys, if you can do this, if you can train your kids to do this, I have seen absolute miracles happen from this type of thing, helping you stay focused, helping you. And by the way, my time doesn't look at all like it did when it started, right? Everything has changed from where I started my business to where it is now. And that's okay. In fact, that's absolutely expected. But this is my guidebook, so to speak. So anytime I have accomplished some things and have a little bit of downtime, right? So I've done my emails in the day. I'm like, okay, what should I be focused on next? I pull up this guide, and it's right there, and it tells me what time of the day and what I should be doing for that time slot of the day, and that helps me stay focused. Because that focus, I can get so much more done in the time slot allotted to me, as opposed to bouncing from one idea to another idea or wondering what I should do today or looking at my calendar and saying, well, I don't have anything planned today. So I guess today will be a day to run errands or whatever, right? This gives me that guide where I start doing the right things every single day. And some of those right things are hard things that I would rather put off because they're difficult. When I put them into my calendar plan, then I just do them. And the more I do them, the less hard they become. So that means I avoid them less and I become better at them, and thus build a career around this business using actual business concepts. These are the types of things that any good trainer would have you be doing. These are the types of things that when somebody comes to me for personal coaching, this is the type of stuff that I have them do. And so this is your homework for the week, right? Let me go back to share my screen here. What you want to do is you want to become a master of managing yourself. In order to do that, step one is you got to know where you're going. What is your blueprint? What is important to you? Have you defined that? If you've defined that clearly, then you build goals that help you go that direction, and you plan every day, every week, every month in advance. You are not a victim of your life. You are the designing architect behind it, right? So you take control and you live with intent each day. And then once you've done that, your last step is, wow, that was weird. The window stopped sharing. Let me see if I can get that back. Slide. Sorry, a little bit of glitch in technology there. Wow, and it really went back. Okay. So the last step of the day is to evaluate. At the end of every day, you not just have a plan, but you hold yourself accountable to that plan. And some people aren't very good at this. They need an accountability partner, which is fine. You can find an accountability partner. There's lots of other realtors that are good with building each other up. But if you don't want to do that, then you need to be your own accountability partner, which means you made a plan, record at the end of the day, how well did you do? Track your results. Be honest with yourself about what you did, and evaluate or measure your progress, and then make adjustments as needed, right? This is a part of mastering yourself. It's not time management. It's a mastery of yourself. You have a vision of what you want. You make a plan of how to accomplish that, and then record your results. How well did you do? And what ways can you improve that? So here's your homework. Your ideal week list, again, simply blank sheet of paper, all the things that are important to you, right? Now put that into a guide. And it should be personal time, it should be family time, it should be self-development, and it should be your work, right? Because all of these things need attention. And then each morning you're going to plan. You're going to say, okay, here's all the important things to me. I'm building a plan out to accomplish this. And then at the end of each day, you take time to record How well did you do? What is one area that you can improve on? And guys, you just turn this into a business. It's a system. Okay. It's not if you feel like it. This is part of the job. So I don't know if I do any other trainings. I have several trainings I know that I say, this is my favorite one. But guys, this concept here completely changed my life and it completely changed my career. I hope you guys will have enough faith to try to do this. Okay. Put it into effect for a week. Build out this plan. Have your vision, which we should have already had, but I know most of you didn't share that you had created this vision, the blueprint that you wanted to have in life. You need to have that blueprint first. You need to break it down into SMART goals, specific, measurable, action step. They need to be all related to your vision, and you need to have a time base for them. Once you break that down, then you've got clearly defined action steps that you need to then slot into your calendar. And then you print that calendar out, and that's taped next to your desk. Put it in a plastic sleeve so it doesn't get ruined, and follow that guide. And again, when you see flaws with that guide or you grow out of it, which you probably will in your first week or two, then you redo this activity. And you have a guide so that you use that guide for your discipline. This discipline is something that it's hard to build, but it's very important. In fact, I would think it's absolutely irreplaceable when it comes to being self-employed. There's nobody else to watch you punch the clock. So if you want to be successful in this business, these are some of the most important habits that you can do. And how you build habits is repeating the right things every day. So in your calendar guide, that's the goal. So thank you guys for joining me. And I hope that this was beneficial to you. And I really hope that you take the bite out of the elephant this week and go do some of this work. Thank you.